course, we're having a conversation to do with this new campaign, of course, that is looking at 25 conversations in 25 schools in Africa, just detailing some of the cases of child abuse in Africa. Quite disturbing stories, I must say, and we just want to continue with the conversation. And I want us to continue, and I want to take another card here and read out another story. And this one says, if your dad has been sleeping with you since the age of 6 to 9, and your mother randomly, then you happen to escape from his house, now you have grown big, can I kill my dad when I meet him again? And that's a 17-year-old girl. Mm-hmm. Right, so let's just have, all right, so it says, if your dad has been sleeping with you since the age of 6 to 9 and your mother randomly, then you happen to escape from his house. Now you have grown big. Can I kill my dad when I meet him again? Wow, so that's a 17-year-old asking that question.
That's it.
Yeah, so there you go on your screens. So there you have it there. You can just read it there with the graphics. So this child was able to escape.
Yes.
And now she's older, and she's asking now, can I go back and get at my dad?
And kill my dad.
Yeah.
She was talking because we were giving them laws and their rights within the law. So for her, she was asking in the sense, when we prodded further, in the sense that, does the law now allow me
to kill him?
To kill him. That's the connotation. And if you can see how she's writing, if your dad has been sleeping with you...
that's exactly how they...
That is exactly how they wrote.
So
we are not
letters.
editing the English or anything.
Yeah.
So for her, she started talking as if she's talking about an hypothetical issue. Then at the end, she says, can I kill my dad when I meet him again? That's the only time you realize she's now talking about herself.
Yeah.
But most of them would start talking about something hypothetical or a friend, but they're actually talking about themselves. So this one was asking to get permission from the law to kill her dad. So what you have here, yes, this child has escaped because the mother moved her from that situation, but you have a child who has not gotten any psychological help. And psychological help is continuous, is not one-off. So this is the child you've released in the society who needs help and has never received that help. So we have a sick child who has never healed. Because one day if she meets the father, she will kill him. And this came from a school that is very affluent in Nairobi.
Oh, really?
That means she's aware, I can have a gun, I can have something. Yes. So these things are not happening in poor communities in the slums. They are happening in every home, irrespective of class.
All right.
Yes.
Now, with the varied concerns and scenarios that we are profiling here, what are the things that you say need to be done right now? And also just roping in the ministries that are involved. What needs to happen? Because it seems that, at some point, the family cannot protect a child, so it calls for somebody else outside that setup to actually to come in.
I mean, from my end and from my experience, Betty, we have to have a multisectoral approach. It can't be a one blame game, saying that the parents have failed, that the teachers have failed. It has to be the whole society. It has to be the whole community. Starting from breaking the silence with parents, encouraging their children to talk about it, starting with the Teacher Service Commission, holding teachers to account when such violations happen and not just transferring them or punishing them very lightly as we have seen in the past. Starting with the police, who must do a thorough job of investigating cases that are brought to them. We have to go to the office of the DPP, that is the Director of Public Prosecution. They have to be able to prosecute these cases thoroughly to the end and secure convictions. We have to have judges who are acutely aware of the fact that we do not want to remove these children from their natural environment and that we want these cases prosecuted as fast as possible. We have to have the counties talking and doing something about this, because now something like health is a devolved function as per the Constitution, and sexual and gender-based violence touches very strongly on the right to health of this child. We have to have counselors on board. We have to have shelters, safe spaces where not just children but even women who have been violated can go to, can find refuge when this happens. We have to have religious leaders breaking the silence, talking about this, because it is happening even in the religious spaces. It's happening in the churches. So it's not about just a one-off. Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Public Service and Gender and Youth Affairs we have to have these conversations. We have to have the media. We have to have you guys breaking the silence and talking about it and bringing this to the limelight. We have to continue with, as civil society, as NGOs, we have to, hold each other's hands, and where the gaps are missing from the government side as a duty bearer, we have to step in.
All right.
We have to push and push and push.
And that's why my next question comes in, in my own individual level, because, there are people who are watching and they're like, okay, we'd like to help, but anyway, I don't work in the Ministry of Education, nor am I, any senior officer in any other institution. But, how can we throw the challenge back at Kenyans themselves, the community? Because also I feel like it calls for a culture change whereby I'm not just concerned about the things that happen in my house, but also what do you know about that child, maybe who, maybe time to time seems that, they're struggling with one thing or another. How do I pay attention?
It's interesting you've asked me that today. I've been sharing these cards every day from the 25th of November on my social media space. And yesterday was the last day. So today I did a whole list of what I expect anybody who's following me to do.
Okay.
And one of the things I said, or several things I said, go back to your school if you're a parent. Find out whether there's a guiding and counseling teacher. Find out how much informed, equipped they are to handle such a case if it ever occurs. Lobby as parent-teachers associations for the Ministry of Education to ensure that we have age-appropriate conversations with our children in schools, because some parents will not do it, but we have to protect our children. I also said, find out who your MCA is. Ask them share these cards. They are on social media everywhere. Share this conversation. Ask your MCA, how much money are they going to put in place to ensure we have structures at the ward level to make sure that our children are protected? Ask your religious leaders or your religious space, do you have a place where when children come or even when young people get pregnant, are you quick to say they were promiscuous? Maybe their father impregnated them. Maybe an uncle did that. Maybe a neighbor did that and they didn't say anything. Ask, and have a conversation with your children as well. Do they even know? Sometimes as parents, we don't even tell our children some of our body parts, what their names are. We scout around some areas and others we mention very loudly. Head, shoulders, knees, and toes. And then we forget the rest. Can we start having a conversation with our children? And fathers and mothers need to do this. It's not just about the women. I think fathers also need to step in and talk. What are we telling our young boys? What kind of masculinity are we raising in our children to feel that they can take any person's body for their own gratification? Because just yesterday I got a text from, was it Butere, that widows are being raped by young boys. What are we teaching our children in such a way they feel that they have a right to any woman's body, whether it's a small child or whether it's an old woman? These are conversations that are difficult, but that we need to have. But also take responsibility. You pay taxes. When you see corruption has happened in the Ministry of Health, why are you not saying anything? This is the money that could be used to protect and create structures that protect our children. And after all, our government has signed, has ratified instruments to protect our children. Can we put money where our laws are so that they are alive and well and actually protect us?
All right.
Yeah.
So I want us to just sample maybe one or two more other cards. And all these stories are just so heart-wrenching. So let me just, so there's one here by a 12-year-old, and she's asking, Kwa nini wazazi wanapenda kusema tukajitafutie pesa ya pads tukishaanza periods? Wanamaanisha nini na kujitafutia? So that's the 12-year-old.
Yes.
I remember you highlighted that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the problem is it goes back to, some of these cases are going back to the parents themselves. What does it mean, kujitafutia? Yeah. So, another card here says, why should teachers have sex with students for grades? That's a 13-year-old who's asking that. So, you can imagine at 13 years...
Yes.
Why?
It's not even university here.
It's not even university.
Because we always think it's university, but it's not.
This is a 13-year-old. This is a primary school girl, or it could be boy also.
Yeah, and Betty, allow me just to take you back to the conversations on the law. Now, the Teacher Service Commission has a beautiful code of conduct. A beautiful code of conduct. You read it, you feel that you are sufficiently protected. Because the Teacher Service Commission code of conduct says, number one, no teacher should, in terms of the law, they should not be allowed to negotiate such things in terms of sexual harassment. And that
like
if
a transfer to another part of the country.
I mean, it's not a matter of transferring you. In the first instance, you're not even supposed to be sending students to your quarters where you live. You're not supposed to be talking to students out of the hour, what we'd call the office hours. 10 p.m., you have no business, taking children and telling them to wash your clothes. But we've seen teachers who have been doing that. They are sending students to their quarters. They may not necessarily be the violators, but they may have someone in those quarters who could easily violate this 13-year-old. We have, the code of conduct talks about punishment when this happens, that you could actually be punished if you do have a case that is happening. And we have a very prominent case known as the Henry Astariko case that was decided by Justice Mumbi Ngugi, where she actually assigned and attributed liability to the Teacher Service Commission by saying that, look, you have a duty to go beyond just issuing a memo to teachers and telling them, we are warning you. You must take action as a duty bearer to investigate these cases when they come to you. When these children a report, sometimes we have seen head teachers become the ones who are concealing the violation because you're more concerned about the image of the school, how many marks the students are getting, and how the public views the school, rather than breaking the silence when a violation has happened. So the code of conduct is quite clear about these things, but what we lack is the goodwill to implement these laws.
And also, I'm not satisfied with the Teachers Service Commission just sending names and ID numbers. I mean, how would you identify me with my ID number, Betty? I want pictures. So that if you're chased from a public school,
to be circulated,
you should not go to a private school because the private school owner might not know that you're in that list. And the ID number cannot necessarily identify you. I might now start using my passport number as my identification. So can we have pictures and a publicly accessible list of sex offenders within schools so that as a parent I can interrogate, as a school owner I can interrogate. It can be business as usual.
And those
this
sound
is
like
happening.
very quote-unquote simple things, but
they're
to imagine
they
that
won't
they're not
cost us
happening.
anything. How much will it cost TSC to put it on their site?
On their website, on their...
Pictures and names, really, and
even,
county.
Even in the recruitment process, Betty, the code of conduct talks about the obligation, what we call in law, due diligence. Teacher Service Commission has a responsibility to perform their due diligence. Betty is applying for a job. We just don't need your certificate, your CV and your good previous referral letters. We need to do our own due diligence as the Teacher Service Commission to say, can we find out a little bit about this person who has applied now to be a teacher? Can we find out more about their background? Can we find out, do they have a previous case of sexual violence? Has it happened? Those are the things that we need to see, especially with the Teacher Service Commission.
And even with the judiciary, there's a list. They somehow have a list. But how accessible is it? If you have a list that can only be seen by lawyers or people within the courtrooms, it's not enough.
How does it help?
How does it help the public? There's simple things we can do to actually now move this conversation forward.
Okay, and talking about the simple things, I have another card here, maybe the final one before we finish. And it says, if you have been raped by a close family member and your parents again, do not want the person to be reported, what is the best way to handle this situation? That's a 15-year-old. And I can imagine that this is just a representation of many kids out there who also have the same issue, that, you know, your parents, or they make they make a local arrangement.
Cows exchanged,
or
money
of
is
money.
exchanged.
Yeah, how should they handle this situation? Because I want us to give a practical solution to somebody who's watching right now. How would they handle that, Tabitha?
So let me start by saying this so that anyone who is watching should know. Out-of-court negotiations for sexual offenses is a no-go zone. It is not negotiable, and we should not have that. So if there's any parent, any religious leader, any elder, any chief who is listening or watching us right now, please know that in law, out-of-court negotiations for sexual offenses is a no-go zone. We will actually make an effort to prosecute you because what you're doing is obstructing justice. So that's the first thing that all these people, including parents, need to know.
Okay.
Now, for the 15-year-old girl, the first thing that we need to do is encourage her to break the silence. And if the person who is pushing you back from breaking the silence is in fact your own parent, who are the other people that you can explore? Do you have a teacher that you trust in school who you can go to and tell? Okay. Do you have a friend who can be able to break the silence on your behalf and report it? Can we be able to identify in the community someone who is trusted, someone who can be able to take this forward? And at the police station, something else that we've been pushing for is telling the police, again, you must do your due diligence in terms of investigating cases that are brought to you, and not just that, pushing the agenda for this to be fast-tracked. We've seen the Office of the DPP quite, have an SGBV unit. They even have an SGBV unit that is very practical in terms of pushing forward the agenda.
Okay.
So for this 15-year-old, I would tell her this. For her parents, if you are obstructing justice, we will find a way to actually get you prosecuted because that's not what you're supposed to be doing.
All right.
For the child, find someone you trust to report this matter, to report on your behalf. And if they are somewhere close by, one of the things that some of the organizations that they can report to, including ours, I'm more than happy to share our details for them to break the silence and report to NGOs like Kelin, like FIDA, Femnet, Koval. These are NGOs that can be able to help this child and extract them from that toxic environment that they're in.
All right.
The other thing the other thing they can do is call the 116 child helpline. She's 15, so it is free. But I'm glad
they'll get somebody else.
Yeah, they'll get somebody on the other side.
Okay.
But I'm glad I was in that school, and we went with a lawyer and a psychologist. So that child, the conversation continued from that space. But I also want to just ask Kenyans. The practical things I've shared that you can do is hold your leaders accountable. When you hear there's corruption, know that there's a problem. When you hear that your neighbor's child is going through something, be the first one to scream and make noise and report, even if the parents are not reporting. You can see a child who is withdrawn. They don't have to even come and tell you. Prod further. Recently, we had a neighbor who kept the child out for up to 10 p.m. Until she's working late. Instead of calling any of us and just keeping the child, we kept the child in the home. But really, it is not right for a child to for a parent to neglect their child. You're exposing them to so many issues that we can protect. But Kenyans, we have to talk about these things at home. We have to start there. Equip your nieces, if you're an aunt, equip your nieces, equip your nephews. Okay. They have to say when something is inappropriate. Then we can start from there.
All right. Yeah. Wow, ladies, thank you very much for your time. I know I'll do something. I hope everybody who has been watching will also do something in their own small individual way. Yeah. All right, I've been talking to Tabitha Sayo, who is a lawyer with Kelin. I've also been speaking to Florence Mature, who is coordinator at Equality Now. Thank you, ladies, for your time.